Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of goLive, where we have very interesting conversations with very interesting folks. This is your host, Rishabh, founder and CEO of GoML, which focuses on helping customers build production ready use cases on generative AI, leveraging our proprietary platform, AI Matic. Today, I've been joined in by a very interesting, and I'm probably looking forward to a very interesting conversation because Bill on the call is trying to solve a problem that's been probably there since the beginning of mankind, which is how do we probably bring sanity into the labor management piece in mining and construction. I've been joined in by someone who's been in this industry for close to 25 plus years. He's held leadership positions across managing billion-dollar plus implementations in infrastructure, mining, highway projects. He holds multiple patents across jurisdictions that probably focus on AI enablement in contract management. And in his latest role, he's probably launched a platform called Plumbata, which focuses on ironing or filling this gap across how AI can probably help bring, as I mentioned, probably sanity into the unstructured market of labor management across mining and construction. Based out of the mining capital of Canada, Bill, thank you so much for joining us right today. Why don't we get started with a quick introduction for our listeners over here?
Sure. Well, thanks, Rishabh. So it's a pleasure to be here and to meet with you. So I guess if we're kind of talking about how I came up with, the idea of Plumbata, and I've been, like you mentioned, I've been in the industry in mining and in infrastructure, major projects, so billion-dollar plus projects for a bit over 20 years now. And I usually stepped in at the end of these projects, kind of in a cleanup role. I would say once all of the funds happened and you've hit substantial completion. And so as part of this process, I've had the opportunity to see what worked and what didn't work on these projects and kind of where the skeletons were buried as we close them up. And I really noticed one huge gap where the largest component on these projects are often labor costs. And the way we manage labor sometimes in the field, the way we award contracts, labor related contracts. And I noticed there's kind of a gap in the tools that were being used. And this is common. I've seen this across every project I've been on in my time. And it was a real aggravation for me. And basically I decided, I started noticing that there's opportunity, of course, to put tools in. And so I started Plumbata with that purpose a few years ago. And of course, with everything with the, with AI ramping up as it has in, say, in the last 3 years, really, there's a lot of tasks that I was intending to, to perform manually or have someone perform manually. And of course, here's this great opportunity now to leverage AI and to really go at scale. And so that's what we're attempting to do here.
Brilliant. First of all, as I was probably, highlighted at the beginning of the session, this is a problem statement that has probably marred us for, I don't know, since centuries, right? And so it's a very good problem statement to have, right? But my question probably comes from, Bill, the problem statement that you're trying to solve. So the problem statement is very clear. You're trying to bring, or probably how AI can probably make some of these contracts, the unstructured, contracts that you have across this, unmanaged labor force in mining, construction, and whatnot, right? Yeah. But there have been tools in the market that have probably done this in the past as well, right? So IDP is not a new concept that probably market has introduced. Obviously, with these large language models coming in, the accuracy that we probably get on the IDP use cases is very, very good. But what beyond a straightforward IDP tool is your vision that Plumbata today does?
Well, it's really, at its root, where it starts is really, and of course, GoML's and AWS have assisted us. And this is our latest product is called Pactum. And it's a structured database of essentially union agreements, and to put the complexity of the problem. And I'm saying this because the existing tools, of course, there's great tools out there. I'd be very naive to say that I could compete from where I'm sitting with my budget against the Procores of the world out there. Right? They'll always make a better, a prettier app or a prettier dashboard than I can. What we have noticed, though, really is there's a lack of these really, let's get into the deep thinking of what these tools could do or should do and what data is available to us, and I always kind of fall back on it starts really with the labor rates themselves as are negotiated, say, between the contractors and the unions. And so we've created Pactum with GoML. And what that allows us to essentially, on a mass scale, and this is where the AI comes in, to essentially, review these agreements and structure labor rates out of them, very complex labor rate agreements, and labor rules, and use that kind of as the backbone of any kind of downstream contract that would be formed, or of course day-to-day field management. And I always have my favorite prop, Rishabh. It's these union agreements are all different. There's no two that are identical, and this is kind of the size of a typical union agreement. And that's just for one local in one jurisdiction, in one province, in one city, or one country. And we're talking literally, these are so complex, we're into thousands of rates in one agreement. And so now what we've been able to do, of course, is structure this, use this as kind of the foundation of how we're going to manage contracts in the field. And that's kind of what we put together here. So right now we're in the midst of really the ingestion process of these contracts. And we're aiming to have the largest structured database, in fact, probably, and it's a matter of a few months away at this point at the ingestion rate.
So one of the biggest things, so thanks first of all, Bill, for highlighting that, right? But one of the things that probably have always acted as differentiators for a lot of these products, as you mentioned, right? A lot of these tools that are in the market. And we work across some of the most regulated industries, if you really look at it. The biggest challenge that I've seen probably with, or where the customers have been able to build their differentiators, the kind of data that they're able to bring in, right? What does that mean is that probably you have massive set of data, and that's where probably most of these models start hallucinating, right? Do you want to probably dive a little deeper? You mentioned you're in the process of ingesting some of these contracts, right? So what's your data strategy? How you're differentiating primarily the whole tool, number one? And number two, then probably what's your data strategy? Are you planning on probably having very, very focused and very, very specific contracts probably highlighted into this, or probably ingested into this? Some verbiage around probably the table contract rates, how you negotiate, and so on and so forth. How are you probably making this model much more intelligent when it comes to data?
Yeah. So it starts with the basic intelligence, right? So we're taking the agreement, we're structuring it. These are unstructured agreements, and using those tools, you're in a strong, you're strongly set up for the formation of a contract and the negotiation of justifiable rates, I would say, with your contractors. Often the markups on these contracts are excessive to the extreme. So by using, of course, Pactum to start, that's a good foundation. Using that structured data and using it to award the most competitive contracts that you can. Then the next step is to measure against those contracts in the field. And so we've come up with our app. Right now it's called CrewSheet, and the idea is that field representatives can use that to essentially to create crew sheets or timesheets. Because our data is already structured on the back end and we're structuring data on the front end. Now these two data sources essentially can work together, seamlessly, and of course create not only you can get the administrative tools that you would normally get, invoice production, you could just payroll, all of the regulars, but it also gives you a real-time snapshot of how you're performing in the field. Again, and allows us, again, with GoML is helping us with this, is flagging outliers and alerts and warnings and opportunities to improve your management of field labor. So it all really kind of ties in, and of course it starts with the information before we form a contract, right through formation, and then through measurement in the field and in operation.
Brilliant. And just probably for our listeners, what probably Bill is trying to highlight over here is that we built a very, very intelligent and a very contextual IDP instance, leveraging probably Claude 3.7 Sonnet, right, on Bedrock, on Amazon Bedrock, which is one of Anthropic's models. But that's not pretty much it, right? What we've actually built is we've leveraged one of our AI-matic boilerplates, which is called Agentic AI boilerplates, and we built a multi-agent system, as Bill was probably walking us through the process, that it probably becomes a more decision-making or decision enablement or autonomous system on top of this data that we've been able to extract, which not only just probably provides this data real time, but is able to also extract, your real-time negotiation, probably, labor rates, and probably work towards negotiations as well, right? But Bill, do you want to probably talk about some of the outcomes that you were able to achieve as part of this engagement, right? Like, did it probably help you in providing to your customers or to probably these companies better negotiation capabilities, faster extraction capabilities? If we can probably dive a little deeper into the projected outcomes.
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, is providing the intelligence tools in order for a client to negotiate better construction labor contracts. Okay, and which is great. That's a great starting point, of course. And of course, if you know what the union rates are, what the markup is for a contractor. Now, there's also opportunities for contractors with these tools also, but it's really, the goal is to bring transparency to the whole process. And so by doing this, once you've negotiated the best possible contract you can, it's okay. How will I manage that in the field? And that's where the real proof is. And so by using, leveraging like and we've really created a streamlined app where, to create a timesheet or a crew sheet takes a matter of seconds, versus the old way where you'd have a paper timesheet and it was signed and the names are incorrect and someone has to interpret that into a rate and based on the contract. And so of course we've streamlined that process also. It's essentially instant if you wanted it for billing or for again measurement of progress in the field to know how well you're doing versus your awarded contract. So of course these tools, this is what we've built here. And then of course really the real synergies come when we merge those two kind of sources of data. And there's other sources too, that we'll get into maybe another time. But the idea is to provide real-time intelligence, kind of an infrastructure for projects and contractors, in order to essentially optimize performance, and of course cost. We have a labor shortage, especially skilled labor. And we need to effectively use that, to the best of our abilities, and we need those tools. And right now, I can tell you the industry is lacking. And I would have bought these tools on projects I've been on if they were available. They just aren't. So we're going to build them.
Brilliant. Good to probably hear that, Bill. But again, as the industry and probably, you've been in this industry for a long time, so you understand the, business part of this industry very well. Like you've spent 25 plus years across multiple roles and so on. How did the right identification, or probably I would probably use the term not right, but appropriate technology to probably solve this problem? How did that come to you? Like how did you identify that probably, something which is very, very nascent, like large language models, or even probably mature ML models to that extent, can solve this problem?
Yeah. So, originally when I was building, this was really before I and I'm a non-technical founder, of course. I'm an industry guy. So I was really, I wasn't aware of how close we were to being able to use AI, say 4 years ago or 5 years ago when I was really contemplating doing something here. My intent was to do it manually. Okay. Which means essentially I would obtain a client. I would have to find out where the jurisdiction that they were, the project was, what unions were affected. And someone would have to manually, of course, process all of this stuff, which is an extremely labor-intensive process. Of course, when really all the chat GPT stuff started really surfacing 2-3 years ago, it changed that, right? I was not going to be able to scale. Right? It was going to be there's far too much manual work to be involved. With the AI tools now, we can essentially upload an agreement, and very complex agreement. And again, these agreements, none of them are the same. And there's no two that are identical. So they each require interpretation that you could not do previously. You could not automate that. The AI tools, now we're automating it, and we're ingesting agreements, hundreds of agreements a day right now. So that is, of course, is a big thing. Now, the other part is, of course, is real-time intelligence, during, after the award, once the contract is live and workers are in the field, there's a lot of moving parts on these projects, and there's a lot of moving parts in these contracts. And so we need that kind of that oversight, that high level, someone to review for us. And AI, the AI tools are perfect for this. There's a lot of opportunities to save or to trap problems early that get overlooked on major construction projects just solely due to time.
Perfect. I think you've given a brilliant framework, right? And that's what probably our listeners are very, very intrigued about when they come to these conversations. So when you probably designed this, right? And I'm just going to break this into 3 parts, right? Sure. When you're thinking about this, one, you identified a very, very good problem statement to attack, right? That's the first and the foremost piece which we also tell our clients probably who are attempting to probably get started on Gen AI is your problem statement or the definition of the problem statement or the outcomes that you're trying to achieve needs to be very clear. So you probably obviously, bring with the expertise that you bring in, you were able to do that, right? But then probably then you divided the problem statement into two parts, right? Which is one is because these contracts are moving, as you mentioned, they're ever changing. You never have a standard contract across, right? So that's where probably these large language models are a brilliant addition. Unlike your traditional ML models, which needed to be trained across formats, now probably you bring in with obviously some amount of prompt engineering and probably good training attempts, right, across these models, they can probably extract data from multiple sources or varied sources, right? So brilliant use case for LLMs, right? So you map the use case, identify the right technology for your problem statement. And then most importantly, you also mentioned that once this data is extracted, now you need to make sense of that data, right? Which is either through reviewing purpose or probably enabling your contractors or companies to probably negotiate it further. And that's where the agentic frameworks, so probably now these models are much more capable of extracting information and probably taking actions on top of that data, right? So brilliant framework build. You have the right problem statement, which you've mapped. You've probably identified the right technology, which in this case was these large language models because of the varied format. And then eventually extracting that data to multi-agent frameworks, right? So thanks for sharing that. My most favorite question of the conversation, you've been engaged with GoML and obviously AWS as an infrastructure partner for a couple of months now. Would love to hear your experience of working with us, first of all. Any thoughts that you probably have there?
Well, I mean, I'd be honest, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now without first of all, GoML and the support and the collaboration with your team and the support from AWS. I can, of course, we're bootstrapped right now, which meaning that's me paying for it, and that's fine. I can get us to a certain point doing that. I can get it in use, but to really scale like we want to, I think what we need to scale at any level, we need kind of partners like GoML and AWS, and I've been playing around this for a little while. There's to have a development team like GoML available versus the alternative, which is of course for a guy like me is obtaining third party through the Fivers and the Upworks of the world, which is great if you really have a strong technical team internally, which I don't really. We're kind of a light team at the moment. To be able to just heavily rely on something like GoML is it is a game changer, and we will be able to scale now again. With the continued working with you guys and with AWS. We anticipate scaling at a much larger rate or much quicker rate and larger scale than we would have under the previous model.
Brilliant. Thanks, Bill, for that feedback, first of all. And that's why probably, at GoML, we work with startups across, right? In fact, we engage with probably startups like yourself, which probably are very innovative, probably quite at an initial stage to probably very mature startups as well. But I always compare this to a microservices architecture, right? You have each of these components built out, and each of these components do their job very well, and then probably hand it over to the next one to process and so on and so forth. Obviously, as a founder, it's your baby. You bring in the right perspective from the business strategy perspective. We focus more on the tech arm perspective, right? So it's a brilliant collaboration. Obviously, we work jointly with AWS to bring the right infrastructure, funding programs, and whatnot. But appreciate the partnership, Bill, and thanks for that feedback. Before we call it a session, right? A lot of founders outside are still struggling. To probably identify the right use cases. How do they get started with probably adopting something like Gen AI, which is very, very nascent in the market, right? Any anecdotes that you have for young founders or probably newer founders who are getting into this industry that can make them successful, borrowing from your journey?
Sure, and I've learned this because I've overspent over the years trying to figure things out and fumbling around myself. So, again, non-technical founder, I can't, someone coming out of University of Waterloo or something, or one of the big schools, a tech school in the States, they'll have their own way, I think, that they would get into the industry. But as a non-technical founder, you have to be looking at what do you know about your specialty, and where are the pain points. Why, and then why are those pain points there, and what so you have to start with the problem, and then you work through the problem and you see what would help that problem. And then, of course, let's face it, we know where we're going here with the AI tools and how quickly they're coming on. A lot of these processes, a lot of these jobs are not going to be around after a while, and so unfortunately, and there's opportunity there, I think, for the world at large also. But so solve a problem. play around with all the tools that you can. I'm constantly looking at different ways, keep squirming, and trying to figure out how to solve your problem with what's there. And it evolves so quickly. And then, of course, leverage experts when you can, So again, I'll go back, Rishabh, to, get in contact with the GoML or similar type of partner to handle the technical. Don't try to do it yourself. You will only usually waste money, and you'll probably arrive at where I am. But I would like to see people do it with a quicker pace than I was able to kind of get to the realization.
No, absolutely. I already have one shorts idea where I'm going to probably pick up one part where you mentioned work with GoML, Bill. And thanks for marketing for us.
No problem.
Brilliant. Speaking to you, Bill, really great conversation. Really value our partnership and the trust that you put with GoML. But good suggestions, good frameworks. Thank you so much for your time, Bill. And look forward to probably engaging and working with you in the future.
Great. Thank you, Rishabh, and I'll look forward to it also.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill.
Bye-bye.